Hi guys, in today's video we are going to be discussing my brutally honest opinion of Crash Bandicoot 4 It's About Time's demo. Please note that although this is titled brutally honest, this doesn't mean I'll be ripping the game to shreds. It's just my raw opinions where I try to be as objective as possible, like with any other game review. As usual, just before we begin, remember to hit those like and subscribe buttons if you enjoy the content on this channel and want to help it grow. Anyway, let's get started. So before I go any further, I just want to get the elephant in the room out of the way. Now, I know there's been a fair amount of backlash around the fact to gain access to the Crash 4 demo, you have to pre-order the game. And whilst yes, I think Toys for Bob could have explained this a bit better, but even though you have to pre-order to get the demo, if you are unsatisfied with the game after testing the demo, you are entitled to a full refund up until the release date. Also, when the game is fully released, the demo will be available to everyone for free, so you can just wait until then to try it out. Check out my other video for further information. Right, so let's get on to the juicy stuff, and I'm going to begin with the visuals, as I think this is definitely one of the strongest parts of the game. The art style, design and level of detail in this game really is stunning. I mean, I was just playing the demo on a regular PS4 and I was blown away with how good the game looks. I think they did a great job of making the worlds feel alive and full of colour, and I love the use of all the particle effects like the snow on Snow Way Out, for example. But I think what really stood out to me is this feeling of depth in the environment, which I think is really important for a platformer, as you tend to be moving in one direction. A great example is Dino Dash, where you have the main track that you are running along, but in the distance you can see this big dinosaur just doing his thing. Then you have some lovely bits of foliage, and then further still you have these massive pillars way off in the distance. I think this really shows off the talent and hard work of all the artists on the team. These layers and layers of depth really allow you to get sucked into these wacky and fantastical worlds. I also think that this theme of time and different dimensions is probably one of the toughest themes a game can choose from a design point of view, because there are so many different styles and assets that have to be created. So once again, I really respect what an incredible job the team have done visually. The second thing I want to discuss before we move on is the character models. I know initially when the game was announced, a lot of people really weren't a fan of the new models, particularly when it came to Crash, but I think overall when I was in game, I didn't really notice that Crash was much different. I think if you compare the designs side by side, you will see a significant difference, but I have to say I didn't feel like I was playing as a different character. Yes, he looks a bit younger and more cartoony, but still feels like the Crash I know. I also think Cortex looks really cool, although there was one thing I noticed that probably needs fixing. When playing as Cortex and you get a mask or hit a mask crate, he is given Aku Aku, which is Crash's mask instead of Uka Uka. I hope this is just because the demo is an earlier build, but that is something that really needs fixing. Next, let's talk about the gameplay, and I guess the thing that stuck out for me the most was the difficulty. So I've played a lot of Crash games in my time, and I certainly played the original 3 games to death, but I have to say the levels that were chosen to go into the demo really were pretty damn difficult. Like, even for returning players, there are some really hard sections. One thing in particular was the bonus level on Dino Dash. My god, that is a mean bonus. Oh, what is this? What is this? This is so mean. Now, don't get me wrong, I really enjoy the fact that Crash Bandicoot games are difficult. That's part of the fun in my opinion, even if it does result in rage. I know some people worried about the game being too easy, but this is definitely not the case. However, when it comes to the demo, I feel they probably should have chose somewhat easier levels, because I think for completely new players, the difficulty here could have been too overwhelming and potentially turn new players away because it's too hard. What I did like about the difficulty though were the 2 different play styles you can choose from, modern or retro. This is a really nice touch that does accommodate for both new and old players, something they have focused on quite heavily in the marketing side of things. However, one thing that did puzzle me was that there was no explanation of the differences between the 2 modes. Fortunately, there are explanations online, but it seemed a bit strange that there was no description. Retro mode works like the old Crash games, where there is a live system, and if you lose all your lives, you get a game over and you have to restart the entire level. Modern, on the other hand, gives the player unlimited lives but has a death counter instead. The death counter can also be seen on retro mode as well. But yeah, it's a nice touch that I think players will appreciate. Moving on to the new landing circle UI element, which is something we haven't seen before, but it has been put into the game to kind of help players to work out where Crash is going to land when in midair. Now, the hardcore veterans out there might see this as hand-holding and makes things too easy, but firstly, I think this is good just to give a little bit of help for new players. However, I do think, like with modern and retro modes, you should be given an option that will allow you to turn the circle off, especially if the devs want to continue accommodating for both types of players. Next, I'm going to talk about Crash's abilities, as he actually got a number of abilities that you would normally have to unlock. For example, he now has access to double jump and body slam from the start, whereas in Crash 3 you would earn them as you progress through the game. There's two things I like about this. That one, I think it gives Crash a bit more utility, and two, it means the levels can have more variety from the beginning of the game. For example, in Crash 3, the first set of levels would have to accommodate for Crash not being able to double jump, so it would somewhat reduce the amount of variety in the level. However, I could have this wrong, as we actually don't know what part of the game these levels were from, so we might have to unlock the abilities. Crash also has one new ability, which is the low spin kick, which can be activated while sliding. This again adds the flexibility for another set of different obstacles. I imagine there will be times where you have to slide under something and an enemy will be the other side, so this is where you will be using this additional tool. Again, it's just something subtle but can add some interesting new mechanics. The final thing I want to touch on relating to gameplay is the new twists on old favourites, and what I mean by this is that Toys for Bob have added in some of the things we've seen and loved from old Crash games, but with some unique twists. I guess the best example of this is in Dino Dash, where in the past we've had levels where Crash is chased by dinosaurs, but there is this one point where you are running from the dinosaur, but you find yourself rail riding, which is a new mechanic, and you are no longer being chased by just a T-Rex, but also a herd of other dinos. I know this is quite a small thing, but I just like that it's a little bit different instead of just having the typical giant boulder style of level. So I'm sure there will be a lot of things that are familiar to us, but with just nice little differences here and there. In this last section, we are going to be talking about the music, which again I think is another really strong aspect of the game. I think Crash Bandicoot has always been known for its catchy music that can just leave you bopping along as you jump over obstacles. In Crash 4, this also seems to be present in both the demo and other gameplay footage I have seen. I really adored the music score. It really has this playfulness to it that I enjoy. For anyone who is a Plants vs Zombies fan, I think this is a soundtrack you will love. You will hear a lot of things that actually sound very reminiscent of PvZ, the mobile games in particular. The one thing about the music I was a little disappointed with, but may have just not been in the demo, is the famous Crash Bandicoot theme that we all love doesn't seem to be present. I expected to hear it in the main menu music, but unfortunately not. I know each Crash game has a different type of sound, but the original trilogy were all tied back to the main theme in some way. Now don't get me wrong, I think the main menu music is catchy and still has that Crash Bandicoot flavour with the strong emphasis on the xylophones and stuff, but I do miss the good old... Overall, I have been really impressed with what I have seen and played of Crash 4. I think there are a number of things that probably need ironing out, and perhaps they could have chose at least one of the easier levels just for demo purposes. The game looks and sounds amazing, has some really awesome new gameplay mechanics, as well as accommodating for both returning and new players. The full game will cost £60, which is very pricey, but it has been officially confirmed that there will be no microtransactions in the game at launch or post-launch, so I think that's possibly why it's costing more money than most games these days. For any of you who are unsure if Crash 4 is for you, I do suggest waiting for the full game to release to get a better idea in terms of how much content the game has for the £60 price tag, but remember you can always pre-order to access the demo and then cancel the pre-order before launch day, which is the 2nd of October. Anyway guys, that's about it for today's video. I hope you enjoyed. Let me know what you think of this in the comments below. But other than that, remember to subscribe and I shall see you in the next one. Okay, thanks guys. Bye. Bye.